It's been a while since we have been able to do a Water Resources Outlook, but we are back for one more for 2014. Interesting forecast for this winter into spring. Jeff and I will elaborate during this December 18th edition of the Water Resources Outlook. A very stark contrast in rainfall over the southeast in the past 30 days. It looked like a wet pattern was developing, and the southeast would start to see some significant flooding from rainfall over South Georgia all the way down to central Florida. A hint of El Nino at work. However, high pressure pushed in and cut that rainfall off, and while there was some pretty good rises in the basins where the heaviest rain fell, the flooding did not have significant impacts. The dryness over South Alabama and Florida Panhandle is amazing, with rainfall totals below a quarter of an inch for 30 days in some places, and not significantly better as we look in the north parts of Alabama and Mississippi. The Carolinas and Virginia had a mix of near normal and slightly above normal precipitation that produced rises, but no flooding in the area.
So the 2014 tropical season is in the books, and as you can see by the chart, the season was a slow one, as predicted by the hurricane experts, and a tropical season that had minimal river flood impacts for the southeast. You can see the light year there for the Atlantic Basin, the lowest since 1997. Only one storm affected the southeast, and that was Hurricane Arthur that went across eastern North Carolina around the 4th of July. Here you can see most of the storms stayed out in the Atlantic with no activity in the Gulf of Mexico. Arthur was the only storm to affect the region, and we did get some pretty good rainfall amounts from it. Those red shades are in the 3 to 5 inch range, but limited to a small area. Though we did have some non-tropical storm-produced flood events down in central Florida in September, which is typical. Overall, a very quiet autumn when it came to tropical storm-induced river flooding in the southeast.
I wanted to show a little bit here as we get into the meteorology of an overview of the weather pattern for the coming week to get a feel for rainfall expectations. The low pressure along the Gulf Coast will be the focus of rainfall early in the period, with rainfall expected along the Gulf Coast. As we progress, a strong low pressure system pushes through the Midwest to bring a front with colder air behind it and a good chance for rain associated with that frontal passage. And you can pause this and take a little closer look if you'd like. So here is the expected rainfall during that 7-day period. We will not see it all in one day, and for many areas receiving it in Alabama, Mississippi, and North Georgia, it is welcome. North Florida can handle that rain, but don't need it as much. The extended look for the last week of the month shows continued above normal chances for rainfall in what would be a shift to a more wet pattern, and we'll address that as we start to look a little more closely at the extended forecast and climatology. And of El Nino. We have been talking about this since the summer, and we are so close to a weak El Nino right now, but it has not been declared yet. And based on the current forecast shown, when we have our next Water Resources Outlook, we should be talking about a weak El Nino and how it is impacting the southeast. Instead, Jeff is going to talk about stream flow tendencies in the southeast based on a weak El Nino and what it means for our forecast. Jeff?
Thanks, Todd. So talking about how the weak El Nino is expected to affect stream flows across the southeast, let's look at analogs, which are a model which uses past events associated with weak El Ninos. And we see that the December analogs were showing weak El Nino, that we would see lower than normal stream flows across the Tombigbee and the rivers in Mississippi. Above normal stream flows across the Florida Peninsula, with the rest of the river basins in the southeast falling in that equal chances at below, above, or near normal category, or where the best chances were for normal stream flows. And so far we can see for the December analogs, this model is working out pretty good. Look at the USGS observed 28-day stream flows ending December 17th. Lower stream flows in the west, higher than normal stream flows in the Florida Peninsula, and normal elsewhere, almost right on with the analogs. So what about January analogs given the weak El Nino? We see much more of the same. Lower stream flows in Mississippi, higher stream flows in the Florida Peninsula, and normal elsewhere. The only change we see is for the better chances at higher than normal stream flows there in Virginia in the Schwann and Upper Roanoke, which could spell an increase of river flood threats. We'll have to watch about that. What about more flooding for Central Florida? Not necessarily, because normal stream flows going into this time of year for many of the Florida Peninsula rivers are pretty low. We see here the Florida Peninsula. After the fall begins to go into a dry season in the Florida Peninsula, so stream flows begin to tail off through the spring, unlike the main southeast region, which ramps up during the winter and spring. So with lower stream flows, typical, but with a forecast of above normal stream flows based on the analogs, this still may not present the potential for an increased river flood threat similar to their river flood season they see in the fall. But we'll have to watch it closely. I think we see higher than normal stream flows, but this may not present a large-scale river flood threat given stream flows are typically low for that time of year.
So here's what the Climate Prediction Center has to say about all this. The January outlook is for rainfall has equal chances for above normal, near normal, and below normal precipitation. Jeff's climatology hints at above normal for January in the Big Bend area of Florida and down through Florida a little bit. If the pattern sets up at the end of December as wet, that could continue into January. Again, El Nino may be having just a slight influence on the long-term weather pattern. And here's what the winter into spring outlook for the U.S. It's the look for the U.S. And Jeff's climatologist said he looks similar to this pattern. The only one area that might be different is the Tom-Bigby Basin and those Alabama basins. Equal chances seem like appropriate forecast for that area, as it really could go in any direction. However, their forecast is for a weak El Nino, which I agree with, and this is an appropriate forecast, I think, for that time. As for the spring into summer, no clear pattern has emerged from the long-term forecast, and the equal chances designation for that time is a good one. As we get into late February and early March, we will have an opportunity to talk about that again. So the bottom line, in the short term, a better chance for rain in the second half of December over most of the southeast. Well, El Nino, we're almost there. Long term, chances for above normal rain from winter into spring and a weak El Nino is still expected. Our next water resources outlook will occur on January 8th, and it will be a live one so that we can talk about our winter and spring flood outlook. You'll be getting more information right after the New Year's, and we look forward to giving that to you. And everybody have a happy holidays and a good New Year, and we will see you next year.